The church doors opened, but it wasn't for me. I was already at the altar, my hands trembling as I held Mark's. Every eye in the room turned, and a wave of gasps filled the air. Standing there, framed by the sunlight, was my older sister, Serafina. And she was wearing a wedding dress. My name is Valerie Douglas. At 28, I thought this was the happiest day of my life. I had a good job, a man I adored, and a future that felt bright. But my sister had always lived in the shadows of my life, trying to steal any light she could find. Her dress wasn't just white, it was a near-perfect copy of mine. The same lace, the same flowing train. She walked down the aisle not like a guest, but like a bride coming to claim her groom. Her smile was a cruel knife, twisting in my heart as she got closer. Mark squeezed my hand, whispering, "Val, what is she doing?" But I couldn't answer. I could only watch as the monster from my childhood tried to destroy my perfect day. She'd ruined birthdays, graduations, and friendships. This time, she wanted to ruin my entire life in front of everyone we knew. But Serafina didn't know my secret. She thought I was the same weak little sister she had always pushed around. She had no idea that I had been planning for this. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was ready. I caught the eye of two large men in suits standing near the back. They were my private security, and they had one simple job today. Serafina thought she was making a grand entrance, but she was really just walking into a trap I had set for her. The real show was about to begin, and it wasn't going to be a wedding. It was going to be her downfall. You might think this is just a story about a dress, but it's so much more. It's about a lifetime of pain and the day I finally decided to fight back. Stay with me, and I'll show you exactly how I took back my life from the sister who tried to steal it. If you believe that no one should ever go through this, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Also, let me know in the comments where you are watching this from. I'd love to know how far my story is reaching. As the security guard started moving towards her, Serafina looked past me, her eyes locking onto Mark. She smiled sweetly and spoke into the silent church, her voice clear and loud. "Mark, before you marry her," she said, "you should ask Valerie why her ex-fiancé is the one who paid for this entire wedding." The world stopped. Every breath in the church was held captive by Serafina's lie. Mark's hand, which had been holding mine so tightly, went limp. He turned to me, his eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep, painful confusion. The whispers from our guests felt like 1,000 tiny needles on my skin. My ex-fiancé's name was Liam. What Serafina said was a lie, but it was a clever one. It was designed to sound just true enough to plant a seed of doubt. Liam was a wound from my past, a wound that my own sister had helped create. How could I explain that now? I remember when I was 17, I had saved up all my money from my part-time job to buy a beautiful prom dress. The day before prom, I found it in the trash behind our house, covered in mud and ripped to pieces. Serafina just stood there, watching me cry, and said, "It looked better on me anyway." That was her way. She couldn't stand to see me have anything she didn't. She didn't want the dress, she just didn't want me to have it. She didn't want Liam either, but she tried to take him from me just the same. This wedding was my beautiful prom dress all over again. Back in the church, the two security guards reached my sister. They stood on either side of her, waiting for my signal. Serafina's smile faltered for a second. She expected me to break down, to cry, to start a screaming match. She never expected me to be silent. She never expected me to be in control. I looked away from her and met Mark's confused gaze. He was searching my face for an answer, for some sign that this was all a horrible mistake. My heart ached for him, for the trust that was now hanging by a thread. But explaining would be a victory for Serafina. Action was the only answer. So what would you do? Would you defend yourself and risk ruining the wedding with a messy fight? Or would you do what I did? Sometimes, the only way to deal with a fire is to let it burn out, far away from you. This fire was about to be put out. I gave a small, almost invisible nod to the guards. Their hands landed firmly on Serafina's arms. Panic flashed in her eyes. "Get your hands off me," she shrieked, her perfect bride act crumbling into the ugly reality of who she was. The whole church gasped. She wasn't done, though. As they started to pull her away, she screamed at Mark. "She's lying to you, Mark. Just like she lied about the baby." And just like that, a new bomb went off. But this one didn't just affect me. I saw Mark's face go completely pale, because that was one secret he and I were supposed to take to our graves. The word baby echoed in the silent church. It wasn't just an accusation. It was a ghost. Mark's face, which was confused before, was now shattered. This was a secret that belonged to us. A piece of our history, buried deep in a place of pain, that we had promised never to speak of again. How did she know? The question burned in my mind. There was only one person I had ever told. A moment of weakness, a tearful late-night phone call months ago when I thought I could still trust my sister. I had given her a piece of my broken heart, and she had saved it to use as a weapon. Mark and I lost a baby 6 months into our engagement. It was a quiet, devastating loss that we weathered together. It was our secret, our pain, our reason for wanting this wedding to be a celebration of a new beginning. It wasn't a lie. It was a private sorrow. I remembered telling Serafina, sobbing over the phone. She had sounded so caring, so kind. "Oh, Val, I'm so sorry," she had said. "Your secret is safe with me." Now, her words from that night felt like acid. She hadn't been comforting me. She had been collecting ammunition. What would you do if someone used your deepest pain to try and destroy you in front of everyone you love? Do you fall apart, or do you show them how strong your scars have made you? I knew I had a choice to make, right there, in front of God and everyone. The security guards looked at me, their grip still tight on Serafina's arms. She was struggling, a triumphant smirk on her face. She thought she had won. She thought this was the final blow that would make Mark walk away from me forever. She had aimed for my heart, but she had forgotten about my spine. I let go of Mark's hand. I walked past him, my beautiful white dress trailing behind me. I went to the priest, who stood frozen, his face pale. I gently took the microphone from his hand. The quiet hum of the speaker filled the church. Everyone was leaning in, waiting for my tears. But I wasn't crying. I was done crying. I turned, not to Mark, but to my sister. I looked her dead in the eyes, my voice steady and clear as it boomed through the speakers. "You want to talk about family secrets, Serafina?" I asked, a cold calm washing over me. "Fine. But we're not just going to talk about my pain." I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. "Let's start with a different secret. Let's tell everyone the real reason our mother refuses to visit you." If words could physically hit, my last sentence was a stone that struck Serafina right between the eyes. For the first time all day, her cruel mask crumbled. Pure, ugly fear replaced her confident smirk. The crowd murmured, their eyes darting between me and my now pale sister, who was still pinned by the guards. Our mother wasn't here today. Everyone had assumed she was sick. They sent their good wishes and told me how sad they were for her. But she wasn't sick. She was healthy. She was just heartbroken. And Serafina was the reason why. She was the reason for the empty chair in the front row. An image flashed in my mind. Christmas, 2 years ago. I found Mom crying in the kitchen, holding a letter from the bank. She was holding an eviction notice. Her retirement money, the money Dad had left for her after working his whole life in a factory, was gone. Every single penny had vanished. She told me she had given Serafina her bank information to help her pay some bills online. She trusted her own daughter. But Serafina hadn't just paid bills. She had drained the account over 6 months, moving the money into her own. She had stolen our mother's future, leaving her with nothing. When Mom confronted her, Serafina had laughed. "You should have been smarter," she'd said. It's a tough world. After that day, our mother never spoke her name again. She refused to see her. She refused to even admit she still had 2 daughters. In her heart, one of them was gone. Now, back in the church, I held all the power. Everyone could see the truth in Serafina's terrified eyes. Mark was looking at me, no longer with confusion, but with a dawning horror, realizing the kind of evil he had nearly let into our family. He finally saw the monster I had been fighting my whole life. I lowered the microphone just a little. "You have one chance, Serafina," I said, my voice low but carrying in the dead silence. "The guards will walk you out the back door, and you will disappear from my life forever. Or you can stay, and I will tell everyone what you did to our mother." What would you choose if you were her? A quiet exit, or complete and total ruin? For a moment, I thought she would break. I saw her body sag in defeat. But then, a flicker of that same old poison returned to her eyes. She wasn't going to go down without trying to take me with her. She twisted in the guard's grip, her face a mask of rage. She looked right at Mark, a desperate, wild look in her eyes. "Don't listen to her, Mark," she screamed, her voice cracking. "She's not as innocent as she looks. Ask her about the phone calls. Ask her why she was secretly meeting with Liam last week." Another lie, another attempt to poison the well. Serafina's words about Liam hung in the air, thick and heavy. I saw a flicker of doubt in Mark's eyes again. After all, why would I meet my ex-fiancé just days before our wedding? It was the one question I had hoped I would never have to answer. But just like everything else today, I was prepared for it. Serafina was predictable. Her cruelty always followed the same path. Find a happy memory and burn it, find a bond of trust and break it. She thought she was setting a new fire, but I had already brought the water. The memory of last week was crystal clear. I sat in a small cafe, a cold cup of coffee in my hands, listening to Liam. He had called me, his voice urgent. "Serafina contacted me," he said, his face full of regret. "She was asking questions, trying to get me to help her stop your wedding." Liam and I had ended things years ago, but we had been friends once. He knew Serafina's darkness all too well. "I'm not going to let her ruin your life again, Val," he had promised. He told me everything. He warned me that she was planning something big, something public. His warning was a gift. It gave me time to think, to plan, to prepare for this very moment. It allowed me to turn my fear into a shield. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a strategist. And my sister had just walked right into the middle of my board, expecting to be the queen, when she was only a pawn. Back in the church, I saw the hope in Serafina's eyes. She thought this was her checkmate. I let her have that small moment of victory. I let the guests whisper and I let Mark worry. Then, I raised the microphone to my lips. My voice did not shake. "You're right, Serafina," I said loudly. Everyone, especially Mark, froze. "I did meet with Liam last week." The gasps were audible. He called to warn me that my own sister was so full of hate that she would try to destroy my happiness. He came to me as a friend. I looked at Mark, my heart in my eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I didn't want to bring this darkness to our door before our wedding day. I wanted to handle it myself." Then, I turned my attention back to my sister. Her face had gone from hopeful to horrified. "You see, this whole time, you thought you were in control," I said. "But you were wrong. The security guards weren't just here to escort you out. They were here to keep you from running." A new kind of fear, cold and real, washed over Serafina's face. She finally understood. This wasn't just family drama. It was something more. I gave a small nod to the man standing by the main doors. He opened them wide. And standing there, in a formal blue uniform, was a police officer. My voice was the only sound in the church as I said, "They're here for you, Serafina. For what you did to Mom." The police officer walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps the only sound in a room full of silent, staring people. He wasn't walking toward a crime scene. He was walking toward my sister. The beautiful church, with its flowers and white ribbons, had turned into a courtroom, and judgment was finally here. Serafina started to fight. "No! You can't do this!" she screamed, her voice raw with panic. "She's lying. It's all lies." But her struggles were useless. The security guards held her fast. The hunter had finally been caught in a trap she never saw coming. Her beautiful white dress looked ridiculous now. This wasn't just for me. This was for my mother, sitting alone in her small apartment, too broken-hearted to see her daughter get married. I had spent weeks gathering the proof, bank statements, forged signatures, and a secret recording of Serafina bragging about how easy it was to steal from an old woman. I remembered the day I made the call. I was sitting with my mom, watching her count pennies to see if she could afford her medicine. Seeing her, so frail and defeated, lit a fire in me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about making sure my sister could never hurt anyone again. The officer finally reached her. "Serafina Douglas," he said, his voice calm and firm. "You are under arrest for grand theft and elder fraud." He took out a pair of handcuffs. The metallic click as they locked around her wrists echoed through the church. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. For a second, watching her break down, a part of me felt a deep, aching sadness. She was my sister. We had grown up together, played in the same yard. Somewhere, buried under years of poison and jealousy, was the little girl I once loved. But that girl was long gone. This woman was a stranger. Mark came to my side, his arm wrapping around my shoulder. He pulled me close, and I leaned into him, feeling his strength. He didn't say a word, but I knew. We had survived. Our love had been tested with fire, and it had not burned. We were stronger now than we ever were before. As the officer and guards pulled a sobbing Serafina toward the exit, she twisted her head, her eyes scanning the crowd desperately. They weren't looking for me. They weren't looking for Mark. Her eyes locked onto our cousin, Ethan, who was also Mark's best man. "You can't let them take me," she shrieked, her voice filled with betrayal. "Ethan, tell them. Tell them it was your idea." My head snapped towards the front pew, where Ethan stood frozen next to Mark. My cousin. Mark's best man. His friend since childhood. His face was as white as my dress. Serafina's final words were not a desperate lie. They were one last parting shot of truth, aimed at the person I least expected. 100 little moments suddenly made sense. Ethan always needing to borrow money. The way he looked at our family with a strange, quiet jealousy. The hushed phone calls he would end whenever I walked into a room. I had always thought he was just moody. I never thought he was a snake. I remembered seeing him with Serafina a month ago. They were in a parking lot, arguing. I had pulled over, concerned, but they saw me and quickly changed their story, saying they were planning a surprise for the wedding. I believed them. How could I have been so blind? He was helping her. Serafina was the general, but Ethan was her spy. He was her inside man, feeding her information about Mark and me, helping her plan her attack. My sister's evil was something I understood. But this betrayal, from family, from a friend we trusted, felt different. It was a deep, cold sting. Mark slowly turned his head to look at Ethan. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice was low, heavy, and full of a pain that was worse than anger. "Ethan, what was your idea?" he asked, repeating Serafina's words. It wasn't a question. It was a demand for the truth. Ethan stumbled over his words. "Nothing, man, she's crazy, you know that. She's just trying to cause more trouble." But his eyes wouldn't meet Mark's. His hands were shaking. We all knew he was lying. He was just as guilty as she was. He had stood by Mark's side all day, knowing this was going to happen. I looked around the church. My beautiful wedding was a disaster. The guests were silent witnesses to the complete destruction of my family. The flowers, the music, the dress, It all felt like a joke. How could we possibly get married here, in the ruins of all this pain? The police officer had finally dragged a screaming Serafina out the door. The sound of a distant siren faded, leaving us in a heavy, broken silence. Everyone was looking at us, waiting to see what we would do, waiting to see if this was the end. I felt a surge of defiance. I would not let them win. I would not let their hate be the final word on this day. I walked back to the altar and took Mark's hand, pulling his attention away from the traitor beside him. I looked deep into his eyes, blocking out the rest of the world. This day is not about them, I said, my voice shaking but strong. It is about us. I turned to the priest and then back to Mark, a new plan forming in my mind. We're not getting married here, I declared. But we are still getting married today. I didn't wait for anyone's permission. I squeezed Mark's hand, turned my back on the shocked crowd and the traitor who was supposed to be his best friend, and I started walking. I walked right back down the aisle, past the beautiful flowers that now seemed pointless, pulling my future husband along with me. Every step felt like I was breaking a chain. With each step, the power of Serafina, Ethan, and all the ghosts of my family grew smaller and smaller. I could feel hundreds of eyes on my back, but for the first time in my life, I didn't care what any of them thought. This was my escape. We burst out of the heavy church doors into the bright sunshine. The air felt clean and new. We stood there for a moment, just breathing. Mark looked at me, his eyes full of pain from Ethan's betrayal, but also full of a love that felt stronger than ever before. "You are amazing," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from my cheek that I didn't even know was there. It wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of freedom. "So what's the plan, my runaway bride?" he asked, a small smile finally returning to his face. I thought of the place where we had our first real date. A little public park, with a huge old oak tree by a quiet pond. It was where he first told me he loved me. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't grand. But it was ours. That place was more sacred to us than any church. "Do you trust me?" I asked him. He didn't even hesitate. "With my life," he said. "Then let's go," I replied, pulling him toward the waiting wedding car. I didn't care that my dress was getting dirty on the pavement. I didn't care about anything but him. We got in the car, leaving behind the confused guests, the disgraced best man, and all the wreckage of the day that was supposed to be perfect. As Mark started the engine, we felt like two teenagers running away, a wild and joyful feeling bubbling up inside me. We were choosing our own happiness. As we drove away, my phone, which I had tucked into a hidden pocket of my dress, began to buzz. It was a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, wanting nothing to do with the outside world. But something told me to answer. I clicked the button and put it on speaker. "Hello," I said cautiously. A shaky, weak voice answered, a voice I hadn't heard in months. It was my mother. "Valerie," she sobbed. "The police just left my apartment. They told me what you did. They told me everything." There was a pause, and then she said the words I thought I would never hear. "Tell me where you're going. I want to be there." Tears streamed down my face, but for the first time today, they were tears of pure joy. My mother. She was coming. The one person whose approval I had longed for, the person whose pain started this whole journey, was choosing to stand with me. My broken family was starting to piece itself back together. "Mom, we're going to the old oak tree in Meadowbrook Park," I said through my tears, my voice full of relief. "The one you used to take us to." Mark squeezed my hand, his own eyes shining. He knew how much this meant. This day wasn't a ruin anymore. It was becoming a miracle. We gave the same directions to my maid of honor and Mark's parents. We didn't want a crowd. We just wanted the people who had stood by us, the people who were our true family. We left the rest of the world behind, driving toward the place where our love story truly began. The park was quiet and green, a perfect peaceful escape from the chaos. The old oak tree stood strong and tall, its branches reaching out like open arms. It felt right to get married here. This tree had seen seasons change and storms pass, but it was still standing, just like us. Soon, a few cars pulled up. My best friend ran to hug me. Mark's parents embraced us both, telling us how proud they were. And then, a small beat-up car I recognized from my childhood parked under a nearby willow. My mother got out, looking frail, but with a new light in her eyes. We met halfway, and she just held me. There were no words, no need for apologies. In that one hug, years of distance and misunderstanding melted away. "You are so strong, my Valerie," she whispered, her hands cupping my face. "Just like your father." For the first time, I felt it was true. We gathered under the giant tree, a small group of about 10 people. The sun filtered through the leaves, creating a magical glow. We had no priest, so Mark's father stood before us. We had no music, so my friend hummed our favorite song. It was imperfect, and it was absolutely perfect. Mark and I said our vows, not the fancy ones we had written, but new ones from the heart. We spoke of trust, of surviving storms, and of choosing love over hate. As he slid the ring onto my finger, a sense of deep, unbreakable peace washed over me. We had won. But just as his father was about to say, "I now pronounce you," I saw a movement at the edge of our small group. A man was standing there, watching us from a distance. He wasn't a threat. It was Liam. He looked at me, then at Mark, and gave a small, respectful nod. My heart didn't leap with old feelings. Instead, a new, different question popped into my head. He had done his part by warning me, so why was he here now? What final piece of this story did he represent? Mark's father smiled, his voice filled with love. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Mark looked at me, his eyes telling me everything I needed to know. He leaned in and kissed me, and in that kiss, all the pain and chaos of the day disappeared. There was no Serafina, no Ethan, no drama. There was only us. Our little group of loved ones cheered. My mom hugged me tightly, whispering, "I am so proud of you." We weren't in a grand church, and I didn't get a fancy reception. But I had everything I had ever wanted right here, under this old oak tree. I was happy. After a few moments, Liam walked over to us. Mark stood by my side, his hand in mine. He wasn't worried. We were a team now, unbreakable. Liam didn't look at me with longing, but with the calm respect of an old friend. He came to give us a final gift. "I heard what happened," Liam said quietly. "I'm glad you're okay. I just wanted you to know one more thing." He explained that after he warned me, he found the proof he had kept for years. Proof that Ethan had helped Serafina steal from him back when we were together. "She promised him a cut of your family's money if he helped her break you and Mark up," Liam explained. "I gave the evidence to the police this morning. It was the last nail in their coffin. They won't be able to lie their way out of this. It was the final piece of the puzzle. Justice was complete." He wished us a happy life, and then he turned and walked away, a ghost from my past finally at peace. Watching him go, I felt a deep sense of closure. Every wound from my past had finally been healed. Today was not the day my life fell apart. It was the day it truly began. I stood there, holding my husband's hand on one side and my mother's hand on the other. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors of orange and purple. The worst day of my life had turned into the most beautiful day of my life. I had lost a sister, but I had found my strength. My story started with a terrible betrayal, but it ends with a beautiful truth. You have the power to write your own ending. You can turn your deepest pain into your greatest strength. Never let anyone steal your light. Stand up, fight back, and choose your own happiness. If this story touched your heart, and if you believe that everyone deserves a happy ending, please like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There are so many more stories like this to tell, and we want you to be a part of our community. Thank you for watching.